Welcome, everyone. We're just going to take a moment to let our colleagues filter into the Zoom room here. Okay, looking good. Welcome. My name is Eli Reese, and I am an organizational change manager with the University of Washington Central IT Office. And I'm really excited. The last day of our conference, we'd like to welcome you to our first statewide, hopefully not the last, OCM Conference Enabling State Change 2024. So we've got two great speakers queued up for us. But before we get into introductions, I just want to mention that we have Q&A enabled. Please put any questions into that Q&A. If you put it into the chat, which is going to be open throughout the presentation, if you put your questions in there, there's a really good chance they might get lost in all the chatter, and we don't want that to happen. So Q&A is our friend. So introductions, I would like to introduce Amy Reynolds is a communications professional with over 20 years of diverse experience. She currently leads an OCM support team at the Washington State Department of L&I, Labor and Industries. And in her previous role as communications director for the Washington State Department of Health, she led pandemic communications. I bet that wasn't stressful at all. Amy and her husband Marcus live in Olympia with their 3 cats. She holds a master's in public administration from Evergreen State College. Charles, I'm going to mispronounce your name. I apologize. Caldroni. All right. Charles Caldroni is an experienced organizational change management practitioner with Cap Tech Consulting, with over 20 years of experience advising and assisting clients to design and implement OCM initiatives, along with providing organizational assessment, design, and development support. He has extensive experience working with the U.S. public sector, both federal and state, and public utilities. Charles lives in Northern Virginia and is a graduate of the University of Richmond with a bachelor's degree in leadership studies and business administration. So I would like everyone to welcome Charles and Amy. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everybody, and hello from Tumwater, Washington. We really appreciate being asked to speak to you today and for your time. So, as you heard, my name is Amy Reynolds. I use she, her pronouns. And for those who would appreciate a description, I'm a middle-aged woman of European descent with long auburn hair. And today I'm wearing a black shirt with green and blue flowers. And Charles Caldroni is my co-presenter. Charles, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. Greetings all. This is Charles Caldroni coming to you from Northern Virginia, actually, where I've lived for over 2 decades now. And again, for a description for those, I am a middle-aged man of Western European descent with short, very graying hair at this stage, wearing a navy blue shirt today. And thank you all for joining us. So let's see. As we begin today, we wanted to start off actually with a couple of poll items. So Eli, if you could help us out in getting the polls launched here. I think we have 2 questions teed up for the audience to begin with today. So for these 2 questions, we'd like everyone just to react to the statements they see on the poll. The first one asks, everyone at my agency knows how to quickly and easily ask for my help. So for those 4 options there, just if you could select the one that best aligns to sort of your current environment right now. The second question along the same lines, it is 100% clear to me all of the time which work I should be prioritizing. Again, 4 options for responses here. Select the one that feels most relevant to your current circumstances. We're asking these to sort of get a sense of where the audience stands, and it'll help us sort of shape how we drive the presentation today. So Eli, I will defer to you when the responses look like they're starting to pile up here, and then we can look at where the audience stands.
Okay, it looks like they've slowed down, so I think we can end the poll now.
All right. So for the first question that asks how easy it is to quickly ask for help from an OCM practitioner, we're seeing actually a good 30% say, heck yes, that is well established within their organization. And we have about 50% saying it's a nice dream that sometimes is coming close. So there's perhaps a framework in place, but it's not consistent. We have about 20% saying either once in a blue moon or you must be kidding. So we have a bit of a bell curve in the responses there. Similarly, we also have a parallel pattern for the second question when we ask about it's clear which work should be prioritized. About 20% saying a strong yes in agreement to that one. 60% saying, it's a nice idea, but, maybe not full reality, though closer. And about 20% saying that not frequent or not really present at this time. So as we were hoping, this gives us a little bit of insight. So it feels like a fair amount of our audience has some structures in place around receiving requests for support and prioritizing, but we do have a sizable group for, that also this is not a common practice or it's still evolving in their organization. So thank you all for taking the time to answer those. I'll move on. Just quick overview of what we're going to cover today. So Amy will lead off by providing a little bit of background about our team, the Enterprise Change Readiness Office at Labor and Industries. Then we're going to frame up our presentation around a few opportunities that we identified in the past several years and the solutions we took to address those opportunities. So we're going to look at how we told the story of the work we are able to do and the support we're able to provide, how we looked at making it easier for our customers within L&I to ask for help, how we then worked with our customers to explore those requests further, and finally, how we address where the demand for our support overstripping our capacity. Finally, we'll close out with some discussion of what we achieved, where we've further enhanced our process, and then where we intend to go in the future. And of course, we'll save some time at the end for more questions and a little bit more in-depth discussion. So with that, Amy, if I could pass it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Charles. So the Enterprise Change Readiness Office, which you'll hear me refer to, or both of us refer to as ECRO, is housed within the Office of Strategy and Performance at L&I, or OSP. So ECRO launched in 2017 with just one staff person. That leader was Shelley Lackey, who you may have been lucky enough to see present on Tuesday, and she slowly built a small team. So ECRO provides change management support. At that time, they were doing it primarily for enterprise level initiatives. So those impacting all of L&I and sometimes other agencies too. For example, a project like One Washington. When ECRO launched, I was lucky enough to be a communications manager at L&I, and I had the pleasure of working with Shelley. I left L&I in 2019, and then I returned in 2021. So at that time, ECRO was about 4 years old, and they really had a desire based on a lot of kind of pent-up demand to offer change management support at the program and division level, not just the enterprise level. So when I returned in 2021, I had the pleasure of forming and leading a new team known as the Program Consulting Team. So I want to just share a quick note here. We could not have been successful standing up the new team or in any of the efforts that we're going to describe today without the advice and support of Charles Caldroni. He's a really well-respected member of our team, and we appreciate his partnership. All right, we're going to go to the next slide. So when I returned to L&I, one of the first things I did was to reconnect with my former colleagues, and I asked them, "Hey, what do you know about ECRO? What do you know about OSP? What's your engagement with them been like? What do you think about them? Have you worked with them?" The answers about what we do and the services we offered varied widely, and not surprisingly, or maybe surprisingly for ECRO and OSP, they weren't always accurate. So we had a really clear opportunity to help the agency learn about us and about our services. And the simplest solution really was an intranet page. So I think let's go to the next slide. I just want to share a quick note here. I'm going to use the word customers a lot, and I'm using that word pretty globally. So when I say customers, I mean L&I colleagues, L&I leaders, anyone who asks for our services, anyone who receives our services internally and outside of the agency as well. So Labor and Industries has a fairly robust and well-used intranet. And now, as a result of our intranet page, if customers search for change management or several other terms, they're going to easily find our page. So you're seeing just a snip here of the top of ECRO's homepage. You can also see on the left all of OSP's other teams represented as well. And anyone can use this page to access a library of change management tools and templates, as well as some resources provided by our culture team. So launching the page. Step one, building awareness of who we are and what we do. But we also wanted customers to be able to perform important tasks as well. So we took things a step further. So we launched our intranet page, right? So now we've got kind of a one-stop shop for our customers. But the program consulting team figured out pretty quickly that as a new team, we needed a way for customers to be able to request change management support. It was new for them to be able to say, yeah, I have this division level program and I'd really like to get a change manager on board. We also recognized, and we heard both from staff and from customers, that the lack of a clear process in the past had led to some issues for the larger ECRO team. And those included confusion about what ECRO as a whole was working on and how our resources were being allocated. Sometimes it led to frustration for customers about who they should contact. Occasionally, we ended up doing rework when we discovered that team members were working on similar things. And sometimes there was frustration for leaders when they learned that folks were working on something that they might not have prioritized because we had more urgent or important asks on our plate. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So what we did to make it easy for folks to ask for our help is we built a Microsoft Forms poll, and we added the link to the intranet page, and we just started using it. And pretty quickly, we were able to determine that it worked well. It worked well for us. And we also asked for feedback from our customers, and they said it was working great for them too. It was easy for them to use. They didn't mind the process. They were able to quickly and easily find it. So after just a few short months, we made the case for the Office of Strategy and Performance to adopt the tool for our whole program. So we quickly expanded the questions to include all of OSP's services, and then we launched the revamped form in November of 2021. And since then, we have received nearly 120 requests for support. So that's a lot. All right, I am going to attempt to show you our intake tool and give you a little demonstration. Let's see if I can do that here successfully. And apologies, I am just not as familiar with Zoom as I would like to be. I'm a Teams girl. I know I have it open, but I'm not seeing it as an option here. One moment. Thank you for your patience. Okay, I can see it. Let me try one more time. There it is. Okay.
Okay, that
Did I
worked.
do that successfully?
Yep, you're good.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so this is our Microsoft Forms intake tool, and you can see that when I land here, it knows who I am. So if someone is filling this out really quickly, we want to be able to reach out to them if we need more information or to acknowledge that we received their request for support. So first question is, hey, do you need one of these things that we offer as an actual service, or do you just want to chat with us, but you actually need something else? So I'm going to say that, yes, I'm here because I need a core OSP service, and I'm just going to click next. So now we're asking for some information about who are you and what are you hoping for? So I'm going to say that I'm a project manager. The next question is, who's leading this work? And folks can check here everything that applies, right? So maybe it's one division, maybe it's a bunch of divisions. And then next we're going to ask, who's going to be impacted by this work that you want to do or this change that you want to make? And if you say yes, we might ask for more information about those groups if you have it. For the purposes of the demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and say no. Next, we're asking who is sponsoring this work. So at LNI, most projects typically have, at a minimum, a business sponsor and an executive sponsor. So I'm going to put my own name here. And the next thing we're going to ask is, how quickly do you expect to complete this work? And this can totally be an estimation, but it helps us understand, is this something that's happening in 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years? The next question is project management one of the areas of support that you need from OSP? And that will launch a series of questions specific to project management. So I'm going to say no for the purposes of our demonstration and say next. So here you get to the change management support question. And we've given them a little, if folks are saying, well, I'm not sure, maybe I need change management, but what is that? We've given them just a really brief description of some of the things that they might be doing in their project that we would hope they would ask for change management support. So we're going to say yes, because that's why we're here today. We are change managers. So the most important question in the form, in my opinion, is what is this change and why do we need to make it? So we love it when they give us lots of good information here. Then we just ask them, is this something that's already happening or something we're thinking about? So we'll say, no, it's just something we're thinking about right now. And then we ask about the team they've formed, right? How robust is it? How big is it? What level of resourcing do they have? And they can choose as many here, or they can say something else, none of these. And then we ask them to help us define what are the needs you think you have that you for sure are going to need, right? Do you need help figuring out whether or not people are ready to make this change? Do your sponsors need some support with their engagement plans? Or is it something else? Our last team here or second to last team rather, do you need culture development support? So we're going to say no and go to next. And here's their last team, which is strategy. So we're going to say no for this request. And here they can share anything else they would like to tell us. And they also have the option to upload files. So if they already have a project charter, for example, they're welcome to share that here. Links to documents or online resources, they can all share those here. Then I'm going to hit submit. And the outgoing message gives them an idea about how quickly they should expect to hear from somebody so that we can help set expectations about that. All right, so I'll share just a little bit more about this system and then I'll pause for questions. Charles, if you want to go back to the presentation, let me stop sharing here. There's the stop share button. So when building and launching this tool, we tried to put ourselves in the customer's shoes. We need a lot of detail to decide how to support and launch our efforts on a change management project. So we could have made that form 100 questions long, but that wouldn't have been a good use of our customers' time and it wouldn't have been a good use of ours. So truly a conversation is best because it helps us establish the relationship. It allows customers the opportunity to share things that they might not feel comfortable putting in writing. And so for those reasons, our standard practice is to schedule an intake conversation after we receive these requests. We try to do that within a week or two. The requester also has the option of inviting others to the meeting, which allows us to hear more than one perspective, which is always valuable. You should have a copy of our intake interview questions as one of the handouts on the conference materials page, and you may have already seen those. I'm going to go ahead and pause for questions about the demo or about what I've shared so far.
Amy, we don't have any questions in the Q&A, but I'm wondering if possibly you could drop a link into the chat to the ECRO page. I tried looking it up, but I'm not sure that I have access to it.
Yeah, that is the case. It is on our intranet. So folks outside of LNI are not going to be able to get there, unfortunately.
Ah, bummer.
Yeah. Good idea, though.
Yeah, we don't have any other questions at this point.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna move on then. So aside from this easy and consistent experience for customers. What did we gain from this work? Well, we gained several things. We gained the ability to see where in the agency requests are coming from. We gained the ability to track what we're working on across ECRO, across OSP, and especially the places where we're collaborating, which we just weren't tracking before, was kind of common knowledge. So we can see now who's working on which project, which is great. We can provide that data to leaders who are interested in saying, hey, how many projects in my division are you working on? Well, let me get that number for you. Here's a little report. And the ability to use the data to show when requests are exceeding our resources, which helps us either make the case to leaders that we need to add some resources to the team, or to think about having the tough conversations about which requests we prioritize, right? Do we need to come off an older project to support a new, higher priority, more urgent project? Charles is going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But the main benefit from my perspective is that really it's really for customers, right? So there's no secret handshake if you need change management support. You don't have to know somebody to get some help. Everybody has an equal opportunity to access our services. And we knew once we got that process up and running that we couldn't just, be following our instincts when we decided which requests to support and prioritize. We needed some consistency there too. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to Charles to talk about what we did next.
Thank you, Amy. And I will apologize quickly. I'm getting over a respiratory bug. So if I happen to be sniffling a little bit in the middle of my presentation, my apologies for the disruption there. But yes, so we had reached an interesting stage after we had deployed these solutions that we were really happily surprised how smoothly everything was working. That was a great experience just to start see these requests coming in and really have great uptake by our customers within the agency. The other side of it was that as we started to see these requests flow in, we realized that the past couple of years where we've been focused so much on sort of the key enterprise level initiatives at LNI and not providing as much support to the divisional and program level efforts, that it seemed like there was a pretty significant pent up demand within the agency for OCM support. And we started to realize that there was at least a risk of running into a pretty significant challenge where our requests would pretty rapidly outstrip the capacity of our team to support all of them. As we looked at this, we realized that there would pretty quickly come some tough conversations about, well, which effort does really get priority. And in particular, we talked about the scenario where, okay, well, is it just first come, first serve? Though that's not necessarily, equitable or appropriate in response to the agency's needs. So as we thought through this, we realized that there was another opportunity, another potential solution here. That was building a prioritization tool. And this tool that we designed would help us to consistently and fairly evaluate the requests from our customers at LNI. The tool addresses a number of factors. We worked with our team and with other partners within the agency to identify what would be the factors that would be most relevant based upon the agency's mission, the culture, the governance structure, and also how do we incorporate in OCM best practices so that we could make decisions that also made the best use of our team's capacity. You'll see a list of the high level factors here. We'll look at them a little bit more detail as we demo the tool. But for example, the first point when we talk about scope and breadth of impact. So we are looking at both the types of change. Is the change related to policy, to agency processes, to jobs or roles, and also how broadly those changes could impact individuals both and outside of the agency, our customers and partners and other constituents, as well as internally amongst the employees and contractors of the agency. As I said, we'll look at these a little bit more when we look at the demo. One other point to note is we did consider factors that, trying to address if a change impacts historically disadvantaged populations or any groups with a history of negative interactions with L&I, for example, to make sure that we were building in some equity considerations to this approach. I will say, as we built this out, one thing that quickly became apparent, this is an approach that was tailored for L&I, that other organizations may have a different set of factors that make sense to them. For example, funding is not one of our criteria. At L&I, our team is funded at the enterprise level rather than associated with specific projects or programs. So we don't have to account for budgeting into our prioritization. That may not be the case for other organizations. As I go into the demo, I'll describe these criteria in more detail when I go through the tool. A copy of the criteria we've defined and the responses for each one has been included with the handouts for this session. But at this point, I would like to move into the tool here itself. So we will stop sharing once again. And if you all will bear with me for one moment here while I get that loaded up. As Amy said, I'm a little unfamiliar with Zoom at this stage as well. It's been a while since I use Zoom particularly regularly, but hopefully the Excel file I'm pulling up is now visible to everyone.
I can see it.
Great, thank you, Amy. So we built our tool in Excel. We found that would be the easiest platform for a first version that would be commonly accessible to the team. And one item to note right off the bat, we built this a few years ago, and you'll see that we use the term stakeholder frequently in this. We realized that the OCM profession is moving away from this term. And at L&I, we've engaged in conversations about what is the appropriate and consistent term that we should use in its place. That hasn't been formally determined yet, but we are tracking that and intend that once it is agreed upon, we will be moving to a new term in the next iteration of this tool. But so for the tool structure itself, we address each request as a separate column. You'll see here, these are some generic names that we've added for actual projects that we've evaluated in the past. This is not the full set, but giving you all sort of an illustration. And then each row represents one of the criteria that we use in our scoring. So as I mentioned before, the first row really looks at the breadth internally. This is really looking at how broadly does the change range from, as I'm scrolling over, you'll see the criteria scores here. Is it anything from a single program up to the entire agency? So for example, put in a hypothetical here. If we had a project that was across multiple divisions, we would rate that as a 3. The next question looks at how our customers, constituents, other partners are impacted by the change. And for example, we may see that it is only an internal change all the way up to if we have large external groups with historically negative interactions or historically marginalized. Any one of those conditions met, we will give this a higher score and thus a higher overall priority. But so, for example, for this example, it may be a 0, it may be a truly only internal effort that we're looking at. The next one may be the variation. This acknowledges that changes that are consistent for all stakeholders may be easier for OCM practitioners to support than changes that have varying impacts for different populations or audiences. So again, I'm building a hypothetical as we go. So we'll say this may be a 2. 2 is fairly common, that it may be one change with some nuance or flavor differences for impacted audiences. Again, this next set, this is the type of change. We have 5 elements here, and each of these are basically on a yes/no basis. So for example, we look at policies, which in this hypothetical, we may say no policy impact, and then processes. Going back to the sort of the basic PPT framework that many of us are probably familiar with, people, process, tools. We've built it out a little bit more here, but processes is always a consistent element. We have the tools element as well. And then we look at, on the people side, we look at our jobs or roles changing, for example. We realize that that's oftentimes highly, a high factor in how people react to changes if their individual job or the role that is part of their job is changing. And then finally, we also look at is the organization structure or the workforce changing in any way as part of this change. So we split that people aspect into those two dimensions here. But we go through each of those and look to see how those changes, whether those change dimensions are present. The next items we look at regarding the schedule. So as Amy mentioned, this is where is the work going to occur in 2 weeks? Is it going to be 2 months or 2 years? And we have some time ranges here based upon what sort of the typical duration of initiatives at LNI. For this hypothetical, we'll say that maybe this is a 1 to 2 year effort that is underway. The next one, this addresses sort of the questions of sponsorship and the case for change. Since as OCM practitioners, we know how critical those elements are in the success of work. We wanted to prioritize supporting efforts that had both the strong sponsorship and that compelling case. So in this one, the leadership request, this looks at internal sponsorship, realizing that with our leadership and governance structure, that generally if it is what we call the LT3, the agency director and the 2 deputies as a sponsor, that generally has some additional impetus and backing within the agency. For this hypothetical, we'll say it's a 2, which would be one of our assistant directors or deputy assistant directors or regional administrators sponsoring this work. The next one, the external mandate. This looks at the other side. Is this a change that is being driven by external factors, ranging from something that may be mandated by a governor's executive order, a legislative bill that is passed, a federal requirement, down through to if it is only an LNI internal initiative. In this hypothetical, we'll say this might be an LNI driven initiative that doesn't have an external driver for it. Then the last few items here look at risk factors. As we consider this, we try and look at what would be the implications if the change associated with this work does not go well or is not received well. And we look at both operational and reputational risk for that. In both of these, we use a impact and probability concept that is applied across most of our project management efforts at LNI. So we were speaking a consistent language there. And we basically look at to see if they fall into sort of that low, medium, or high range based upon that framework. For reputational risk, we're really looking at whether or not OCM support can help to mitigate any risk to LNI's reputation if external constituents, customers, or partners aren't prepared for and equipped for a change. Again, if we say this hypothetically might be an internal only project, perhaps the reputational risks really don't exist in this case. Operational risks look at whether or not a change would exacerbate any challenges operationally within the agency. Such, for example, if it were to increase the risk of attrition and create vacancies in key positions. In those cases, we put greater priority on OCM support to help mitigate those risks and prevent them from materializing. So again, for this hypothetical, we'll call this perhaps a 2. And then finally, our last item is how the team that's been identified and engaged for the work is structured. And we made a decision here that we wanted to prioritize putting our OCM support towards efforts that did have a team established, at least a project manager and a sponsor. We'd found that initiatives without that structure in place when we were looking at support may lag behind schedule and slip, or even suffer from scope or governance challenges. So we felt that our time was better spent on the initiatives that were fully really staffed up. So for this example, again, we'll say maybe this is a fully staffed team that is ready to go. And you see there as we've entered each item, it gives us an overall cumulative score. This one rates in at a 22. which now you'll see this is a table that just shows those items that we were just looking at here. And of course, this is where Zoom is not cooperating with me. So there we go. So as I sort this, and then I will just go now, so that this new initiative actually rates right here in the sort of lower end of the range, fairly close to this internal IT effort, but perhaps a higher priority than the office move effort that we had evaluated last year. So if that's still underway, this helps us to have conversations about where do we need to talk to the office move, for example, about are things ramping down? Could we maybe start to draw back our support? Are you all feeling comfortable with where you stand right now? So this tool, in combination with this, gives us a view of the portfolio of work and sort of the relative priorities for each item. And I will stop sharing here. Let me pause. This is another good opportunity, Eli. If we have any questions in Q&A, we'd be glad to address some of them right now.
We don't have any active questions in Q&A. Right before you started discussing how you prioritize, someone asked, how are you prioritizing requests? So I just marked that we were answering it live because that's what you were going into.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Somebody just dropped into the chat. Are your criteria and scoring transparent to users?
Yeah. We have not broadly publicized this. We have not sent this out to everyone. We have shared this with leaders and stakeholders internally as we were developing it. And Amy, let me ask this. I don't know that anyone's ever asked to see this, but I don't think we'd have any challenges with sharing it if that did arise.
Agreed. Yeah, we would. Charles is correct. We have not shared it broadly with our customers, but if someone asked, we could definitely walk through. We've been lucky so far. I just want to add for context that we very rarely have to say to someone, I'm sorry, we aren't able to support your project. It didn't score high enough, right? So we're doing this for the discipline of doing it and being clear about what our priorities are. But almost everyone who has requested our support has received it at some level. What's more likely to happen is those scores drive for us thinking about, gosh, we need someone half-time on this project, as opposed to, I think we'd be okay providing someone, kind of some coaching or consulting support on this other project that might have scored an 11. So we don't want people to think that we are using those scores to determine whether or not you get support, but it may determine at what level. We are transparent with customers about that we do follow this process and that we do put their project through a prioritization exercise based on all of the information they've given us. So we ask a lot of questions, we get a lot of information so that we can do a really good estimate when we do the prioritization exercise.
Okay. And so a follow-up to that then, you don't have to necessarily reject someone outright, but is there an appeals process or a discussion that sometimes takes place if you're unable to give them the level of resources that they think they need?
Yes, I think this is common, not just in change management, but in lots of things, right? When you're in the thick of a project, you're feeling like, I need all the support I can get, right? I need somebody full-time, I need them to attend every meeting we have, and we might come in and we might have a different perspective about, I think we can really add value to this project, in as little as 2 hours a week or 4 hours a week. So we do have a discussion about what they need and how much resource we have to provide and how much we really think how much we think they might need, if that makes sense.
Right.
Just looking at the other questions here.
Yeah.
To Sharon Boswell's point, it might help your customers queue up their projects more thoroughly if they had the information and the prioritization. Agreed. And we've tried to make sure that the questions that we're asking them during their intake interview match the questions in the prioritization tool. So there have been instances when we are doing the prioritization exercise and we're like, ooh, did we get to that? I don't remember getting to that. And so we'll just do a quick loop back with the customer and say, did you did you say OCIO has oversight for your project? I just wanted to make sure I didn't, miss that or mishear that. We try not to guess as much as possible for those prioritization elements.
Okay, we have a couple of other questions that have come in. First, would you share the Excel workbook with participants?
Yeah, we actually have a copy of the questions and criteria in the handouts for this session. We can share the full workbook if it would be helpful there. We'd want to, of course, strip out historical data out of that one, but we also could do that if needed. I think the biggest part there would be going back to what I said. You'd want to look and see if the factors are still applicable and the weightings that we use are applicable to your organization.
I see some fans of sharing the workbook. So I've dropped a link to where the materials live and the recordings will live. One other question. Are your criteria and scoring transparent to users? We already answered that one. And then who is doing the scoring? The OCM team? Sorry if I missed that.
It is the OCM team.
Okay.
Yeah. And I see a question from Robin Rosine in the Q&A. How does this interact with practitioners in other programs that aren't attached to your office? Only ECRO is doing this type of intake and this type of prioritization. I will say that for the most part, we have a lot of folks at LNI who can do change management, but in terms of folks who are officially doing change management, typically those resources live within ECRO. We have experienced, happily, situations where we head out to staff a project and we realize that someone on the project team has great change management experience and really wants to be involved in providing that support. And so then we just have that conversation. Hey, do you want to lead this? You're a subject matter expert in this program or this division. Do you want me to lead it? And you can kind of support me. How do we want to share the work? It's really just building that relationship and trying to figure out how can we be most helpful and how can we include you? How would you like to be involved? Right. Does that help, Robin?
Well, we can't really get Robin, but
good point.
I think it helps. So let's move on. I don't see any other questions at this point.
All right. Amy, would you like to take on over here, or would you like?
I think we're back to the slides.
That's correct.
I think it's still you for another couple of slides.
All right. Let me get myself teed back up here. Again, apologies. All this switching in Zoom is a little unfamiliar to me at this stage. Yes. So, as we said, well, apologies. We've used the tool for a couple years now. I don't want to repeat myself too much now. And most of the requests we received in the last few years, we've actually put through this process. We've learned a fair amount from that, but we've also been fairly pleasantly surprised by the outcomes here. We found that it really has been helpful, in particular, to look at relative priority across requests, particularly when we have those periods, around calendar year or fiscal year transitions, when it seems like there's a significant uptick in work that's beginning to ramp up and the requests start to arrive at a higher volume. As Amy mentioned, part of it's helping us to find a way to say yes to work without having necessarily to commit to a full team member assigned to a project at a high commitment. We look at those options where we can do hey, can we coach you and advise you on this one, rather than just having to say, no, I'm sorry, we can't do this, or no, we can't do this at this time. That's been one of the ways this tool has benefited us and our interactions with our customers. The other main benefits we've also identified is that we've been able to use this in our engagement with our leaders as well, with OSP and even with other agency leaders around what is the body of work that our team is supporting. And it's helped us make this a case for, in some cases, where we need additional temporary or project resources, or at least to preserve the existing resources, even in some cases. when there have been some questions about, well, what all is the ECRO doing? And ultimately, as we said, it makes us feel like we are making decisions that are, fair and equitable for our customers, or at least as best we can do, and more so than would be the case under, for example, a first come, first serve, or another approach like that. So, as I mentioned, we've been doing this for a couple of years, and we've had some learnings from this. That includes some adjustments that we wanted to make as well. Excuse me. But before we go into that, the stats we have right now, as Amy mentioned, we are almost up to 120 requests at this stage. They've been received from across the entirety of the agency. And while many of the requests, in particular in the last year and a half, have been for more than one type of support, the OCM support has been the most requested. And it's helped us to increase our work across the agency and to really go into some areas that we're not even necessarily aware that there was OCM support available to them, but we've definitely seen an uptick in word of mouth as a result of this entire framework. And right now we have 28 projects across L&I that our team is supporting, as well as at least 27 that we have, taken through from the request intake through to the completion of that project or initiative since we rolled this out in late 2021. That said, we've also continued to evolve even after this first set of solutions was deployed. One of the first items, and Amy was a champion of this, and it has been particularly valuable. We rolled out a customer satisfaction survey that allows us to engage with some of the key team members that we're working with when we're providing OCM support, and ask them, are they feeling like they're getting the positive impact and the value from that support that we would hope would be the case. And we've found some great learnings from that in terms of both strategic and tactical efforts there. We also have built an estimation tool. This is helping us to evaluate the level of OCM support that would be needed for projects based on the complexity. It's still being refined. We've used it for about 2 years now. Actually, we're getting close to that point. We've used that as part of the decision package process, as part of the evaluation of proposed legislation during the last 2 legislative sessions, and also as we've been trying to scope out larger request projects internally. We're now also looking forward at how we can align the questions in our tool with other OSP solutions so we can make better use of all the data we're collecting across our and other processes for our partner teams, and how we can better share the information with leaders and develop effective reports. Let's see, I do see a question in Q&A. Let me address that real quickly. How many staff are supporting the 28 active projects? Oh gosh, Amy, I think we've got about, is it 11 people right now total?
We've got 8 folks in ECRO. ECRO's a little bigger than 8, but 8 folks in ECRO that are working primarily on change management projects. And then we have contractor support that kind of flexes depending on our need. Typically, it flexes up a little bit when we get legislative mandates, right? When we get big bodies of new work or new money from the legislature, which happens a lot at L&I. And then it kind of rolls back a little bit when some of those projects are complete.
Yeah, and I would say to the Q&A question, it varies widely. We do have several efforts where that support is, sort of a weekly coaching check-in, working with the PM to help make sure that OCM is woven into the activities. We also have, let's see, 1, 2, I can think of 3 initiatives right now that are almost full-time commitments for people. So it varies a fair amount across the different initiatives.
Okay, and I also want to let you know you're at your 10-minute warning.
All right, that's great. Well, then let me move on to the closing poll. So Eli, if you want to go ahead and tee that one on up. But now that we've had a chance to go through this, we did want to ask one final question before we go to the closing Q&A. So whenever that's ready to be teed up, oh, great, perfect. And so really this one is just, it's a interest poll for us of just, among the attendees, do you think that you could use either the intake or the prioritization solutions or both at your agency or other organization? And this is, again, is really for Amy and I, our curiosity to see if there is interest. And I will tee up a following slide by saying that if there is interest, we welcome if people want to reach out and learn more about this. So Eli, if you'll let me know when we're getting close to the end here, we've got our results in.
And it looks like it's slowing down. So yeah, let's go ahead and share this.
All right. All right. Well, first off, I will say, seeing the 17% saying they're already doing something similar, that's great. I mean, this has been a maturity journey for us for a few years, and we know that it's had some fits and starts at times. So to anyone else who's been through that, we welcome you as comrades here. And then to the, I'm seeing yes to both, almost 70%, and another 12% on prioritization. So with that said, I'll actually go to this point real quickly, and then we can open up for questions. But Amy and I have been thrilled to share all this with everyone, and we are welcome if anyone wants to reach out and learn more. Feel free to contact us, and we're glad to set up time to discuss in more depth. And Amy, anything else you want to add before we open the floor for questions?
Mostly, I'd just like to say thank you for having us and for your time and attention. We hope this has been helpful.
Excellent. So I don't know about anybody else, but I have absolutely loved seeing the level of maturity that your group has come to. So it's a little bit inspiring for those of us who might be working in a smaller scale situation. I'm really curious. I don't see any questions going into the Q&A at this point, but I'm really curious. What do you see next for ERCO?
Ooh. Charles might have a different answer than me, but if I could, if I ran the world, if I had my wish list, I think our next opportunities include collaborating more closely with our project managers. We already do that a lot, but sometimes there's confusion, right? When two new people haven't worked together, like, hey, are you doing this? Am I doing this? Well, this is what I typically do. Oh, but I typically do that too. So just really getting clear on roles and responsibilities and how we can best support project managers, some of the considerations and constraints they have, learning more about their jobs. So I would put that at the top of my wish list. And another thing that I would love for us to do more of is get clearer on some of the expectations from our leaders. What does good change management support look like from their perspective? Because maybe it's not the same as what I think it is. And continue to give our work more visibility and have them weigh in on, do you like this approach that we're taking? We have increased the visibility of the work that we're doing, but we haven't yet implemented a feedback loop to be able to hear from leaders consistently. Yes, this is working. Yes, we see improvements. Yes, we want you to continue down this path.
And I would imagine with that leadership relationship, it because of the nature of government and leaderships kind of come and go, there's an ongoing churn, so to speak, that it's really a kind of a cyclical relationship, educational opportunity of, again, going back to what is OCM at all, and how we can support you and kind of level set on expectations.
Agreed. I will say, I will give L&I props. They have invested, the agency has invested heavily in building our people up and giving them basic change management knowledge and tools. And so it's rare that we come across a leader at L&I who doesn't know what change management is. So really the next step on my wish list would be to dive down, like, all right, let's talk about my definition and your definition and figure out where we can both be happy and meet in the middle, and making sure that we're meeting your needs and contributing to the success of this important work that you are doing as a leader.
Thank you. Charles, what about you? What do you see for the future?
Yeah, so Amy, and I are in total agreement around the sort of the project manager and how we best partner with that role as well. I think the other two I would see, one, prioritization of initiatives across the agency, not just for OCM, but overall agency prioritization is an ongoing discussion and evolution there. And that's one where we have other teams within OSB who have been working on this from different aspects as well, being part of the conversation about what is the overall agency approach and helping leadership to work through that. I think that's one of the other major next steps. And also, I would say, looking at with sort of the who is available to work on projects. Amy mentioned that sometimes we luck out that a team has somebody on there who, for example, has been through our internal ProSci certification program, which is great. And how can we better leverage that network of individuals to play active roles in change management and grow and practice those skills that they learn through the ProSci course? Kudos to Cheryl, who's been the driving energy behind that course and getting that ramped up for Hal and I. But how can we bring those people into the fold as active participants on projects so that that certification is not just a piece of paper that hangs proudly by their workstation, but something that's getting applied day to day.
Right. And actually, that's a great cue up, and I appreciate this, for me to plug the community of practice, because I think I have a really strong emphasis on relationship and community and coming together. And, if you're not already coming to the meetings or dropping in, it's a great place to meet other like-minded folk, understand some of the, who we are and where we're placed around the state, and for y'all, specifically Ellen and I. And it's, I think, an opportunity to get to network in a capacity that might support your effort. So for those of you who are attending who are not already, Cheryl, I'm going to ask you to drop your contact information for how do I learn more about the COP, because that's how we roll. We want to make sure that this keeps growing and we're all being supported. And all right, she's done that. Awesome. And I don't have any other questions. I don't see anything in the Q&A. We've got a couple of comments specifically. I really love how you're placing special emphasis on prioritizing projects that impact historically marginalized groups. I know that I tend to look at OCM definitely through a DEI lens, kind of being that person, and the fact that you're taking it to that next step is fantastic in your prioritization. So lots of thank yous, and I think
And
we're done.
thank you, Eli. Appreciate your help. And thank you, Amy, for a great partnership. And thank you to Jake and Cheryl as well, who are not on camera, but have been a huge help getting us prepared for this whole effort.
Excellent.
Agreed. Have a great Thursday, everybody.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.